Hey folks, this is Scott and welcome to the XFed Homestead. Well, today's a beautiful sunny day and I'm going to take the opportunity to plant some onions today. Now you can plant onions from seed or from little starts, or you can plant onions from sets, and that's the way I prefer to plant them. I put the sets in the ground, and in less than a week they're already popping up, and I've had great luck with onion sets. I planted 200 last year and I had about 99% pop out of the ground, and I'm still using them today. So that's what we're going to do today, and I have a special surprise. I'm going to plant Egyptian walking onions, which were a gift from my gardening buddy Sherry. So shout out to Sherry, I appreciate you greatly, and we'll see how these work at the end of the year. So let's get in the garden today and start planting. Today feels like the first day of spring to me. It's been rainy for quite a while this spring, and now that it's the very beginning of May, I can finally start planting. And I feel already like I'm behind, but the truth of the matter is this is the earliest I've ever planted in my life. Usually I'm working, I've got things to do, and I don't start planting until Memorial Day. Well, this time I'm getting an early start. I should feel thankful for that. And we'll clean up the beds a little bit behind me. I put carrots in over here yesterday. I'm going to put potatoes here. And then I think this row or the next row, I'll have to check my plan and see exactly where I'm putting the onions. Well, if that's where there are a lot of fingerling potatoes this year, I'm not going to plant my Yukon Golds there. I'll leave a little spot for the volunteers to come up, but I think I'm going to put onions in this row. I'll double check my plans to make sure, but I don't want to plant the potatoes where there were potatoes last year. I like to rotate them from bed to bed. You can see already, I've got some volunteers coming up here. These Russian fingerling potatoes. These Russian fingerling potatoes that I had last year are coming up. So I'm going to take away most of them. I didn't want to grow them again this year. But now that they're growing, I'll let a little section of volunteers pop up down towards the end of the row, down by where the bucket is right now, maybe a little past that. There's some popping up. So we'll let the volunteers go and see what develops. Well, I checked my plans and I certainly had the wrong thing on the plans. Now that I've been reminded by all the volunteer fingerling potatoes that are here in row 3, if I go 1, 2, 3, I realize I don't want to plant potatoes there again this year. And it's hard for me to change plans once I make them. I like to tell my wife that I bring a certain rigidity and inflexibility to our marriage. And I'm sure she's fond of it as well. So I'm going to take this opportunity to grow, and I'm going to put onions here and potatoes over there. So there you go. This retirement thing is really working out for me. I feel like I'm improving myself over time. So let's get that done. We'll get the onions in first. Well, the bed for the onions is all prepped now, and I've taken my marking stick and just made some lines and some grooves all along the length of the bed. The grooves are about 4 to 5 inches apart, and I usually just take my finger and poke it into the soil so that I can drop in an onion set. And here's what I'm using. These are yellow Dutch onion sets, and you can see they're just small little onions that are grown from seed. And when they get to this point, then they're harvested and packaged. Otherwise, eventually they would grow to big onions. So So I use these onion sets every year, and I've had great results. And so I planted 2 packs of these for last year, and right now in the basement I still have about 25-30 onions left, and it was the perfect amount to take us from last summer all the way until now. So I'll be using the rest of these onions until I get more grown. So I'm going to poke a hole with my finger in the soil and then bury these in that hole and then cover them all up. So let's do that now. You got to make sure you put these in with the point going up. I'll just drop those in the hole, point heading up. What I'll do with my onions is put them in a line about 5 inches apart on each row, and then I'll alternate in between each of those. So I have 2 here, and then I have 1 in between. Then 2 here, and then 1 in between those 2. And I alternate as I go down the row so that I can kind of get more onions in the same square footage. So they're offset from each other. And I'll do that until I'm out of onions. Once my onions are covered, I'll water them in good, and in a few days, maybe a week tops, I'll start seeing those little green sprouts coming out of the ground and start growing their way up and marking all of these beautiful rows. Once the onion sprouts, the leaves get about this high, about 3 or 4 inches high, I start taking grass mulch and I sprinkle it over very lightly, and it starts to create a bed of mulch over the onions. And I continue to do that, and after a little while there won't be any weeds in this onion bed for the rest of the season. Well, I said earlier that my gardening buddy Sherry gave me an onion plant, and this is an Egyptian walking onion. And so what happens with these plants is they grow up, and then at the end of the fronds here, they start to develop bulbs, and they develop a cluster of bulbs there, and as they get older the bulbs droop, and those bulbs plant themselves into the soil. So as it goes along year after year, it walks along your garden, hence the name walking onion. Sometimes they're called tree onions. Well, they like full sun, and they're a perennial, so I'm going to plant them in my perennial garden with my right next door to my perennial asparagus. So I'm going to give it a friend over here in its garden, in the garden next to it, next to the lupine and some of the other perennials that I have. I have a few wild onions growing, so it should feel right at home. So let's get to planting that right now. And look at that soil. I think it's going to be real happy over here. I think the Egyptian onion will do really well in the perennial garden. I'll get it watered in along with the rest of these onions. Well, that was a pretty good day's work. Since I've got some more daylight, I've got wood I could stack over there, but I think I'm probably going to give this fence project right here, you can see that fence post right there, that's one of many that I hope to install. So I'm going to keep working on that. I'll do a little bit every day, and so hopefully before everything leaves out and the nice vegetables that the rabbits like to eat are up out of the ground, I'll have that fence in place. So that's what I'll be working on off and on for the next week. But it's been a great day. We got the onions in the ground. I've got carrot seeds in already. I've got some more carrots to put in. I'm going to do the pelleted seeds in the upcoming week. And there's plenty more gardening to do. Until then, for now, this is Scott at the XFed Homestead. We'll see you next time.